Hello, my name is Jimmy Vegas and welcome to this, the fourth in a series of video tutorials on how to make a visual city in Unity 5. Okay, so this episode we're going to be looking at making a kind of a subway entrance and we'll also be putting in a bit of a different background building. Okay, so let's jump straight into it, shall we? First thing we need to do is take a look at our sidewalk just here. We need to kind of shrink it a little. So what we're going to do is, I must say, it is to make a bit of space for our subway first off. So the first thing we'll do is we'll take this particular sidewalk and let me see. Up here, let's click and go to debug. Down the bottom, let's change our scale. So let's change this to 4 and 2. And we now need to shrink the size. So we can either do it here, but for convenience, I'm just going to go back to normal. So again, I'm not sure if I said this before, the reason I do go to debug and then to normal and debug to normal is just to get you a little bit more acquainted with the debug menu just here. It makes things a bit easier in the long run when you do become more advanced in Unity. So we'll change the scale. Let's change this to 10. Change this to 5. Excuse me. Okay, so let's go to Edit, Snap Settings, and let's set our numbers to 0.25, so 1/4. There we go. That'll do. So what we'll do is we'll now move this so as it is flush against our building. Remember, I am holding Control here to move our blocks a little. Okay, so what we want is we want our subway here. So I think we're going to make a bit of a larger sidewalk. So what we'll do is we will select our asphalt. Let's put our snap settings back to 1 just for convenience for now. Nice and quick. And let's shift it this way 1, 2, 3, 4 blocks. That should do. Okay, so now back to our sidewalk. And let's duplicate and pull out to there. That looks a little bit thin, so what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to pull this under our shops about there. So now we have a bit of space. You'll see the reason for that in just a second. So hopefully we can fit an entire object within it, and yes we can. Just about. I think we need to change our snap settings quickly again to 1/4 and just pull it ever so slightly. Is that the case, or are we right up against? No, I think we're actually perfect there. So we can actually set our snap settings back to 1 for now. This episode will be using snap settings quite a bit. So essentially what you want right now is a gap in your pavement, your sidewalk, just there. So now what I'll do is I will delete this particular one and I'll make copies of this. So hold D to duplicate, pull out to there, duplicate to there, duplicate again to there. So I'm going to take these 3, duplicate and pull them to there, zoom out a touch and duplicate once more and pull them to there. So now, like I say, we have a gap in our sidewalk just here. So I'm going to turn the camera around to about there. I think that should do. So in here in your hierarchy, right click, create empty. Oops, that's still in sidewalk there. I think they've kind of, yeah. I've still had the sidewalk object selected even though I'd closed it in the hierarchy. So Make sure you click in the hierarchy just to make sure. My apologies. Game object, create empty. Right click, rename, and let's call this Subway. So what we'll do, excuse me, in textures, let's create a new folder, create, folder, and let's call this Subway textures. So we try and keep everything as neat as possible. So if we go into that folder, and now we're going to import these 5 objects just here, these textures. So as I always say, the textures, assets we use within this tutorial, everything is available free on our website. So just select them all and drag and drop them into the Subway textures folder. So our website is, it should be in the description below. So you can just head over there and select the episode that you're currently watching, and then you can download the assets. Okay, so game object, 3D object, cube. And as always, let's zero out the axis on new objects. Let's focus on it. Hold control and let's move it over here in our gap. So now what we need to do is we're going to create some steps. So I think we're going to need to change our snap settings a little more. Oh, excuse me, got a bit of a tickle in my throat today. Okay, so we'll change the X. Let's see, we'll change that to 0.5 for now. We'll change the Y to 0.2. And we'll also change the Z or Z to 0.5 as well. So let's move this all the way to here. Just position it just right. To the edge there. So we need to change the size to fit in this gap all the way along. And the size of this is 5. So we need to change this to 5 as well. So change and then just pull it into position. So that is a step. You'll notice it's kind of above our ground level very slightly. We're going to pull that down in just a second. So what we'll do first is tunnel steps, this texture we imported, simply drag and drop onto our object, our first step. Shall we change the scale? Let's see what happens when we change the scale. So let's go up here to debug, all the way down, and let's change the scale to 2 by 2. No, I don't particularly like that. I think we'll keep it as 1 and 1. I think that'll be fine for now. Okay, so let's just head back to our normal inspector pane. There we go. So what we'll do, right click, rename, and we'll call this step 001. Now in your Subway folder in the hierarchy, right click, create empty, get a new one there, right click again, rename, and we'll call this steps. And then just drag and drop step 001 into the steps subfolder in the hierarchy. Okay, so our snap settings for Y are currently set to 0.2. So let's hold control and let's pull down on the Y axis. There, that looks okay. So I think we need to rescale the step on the X axis. So let's change this to, how about 0.5 and then pull close. How's that look? You think that's okay? Let's see. So let's start building the steps. Control D, pull out, pull down. Control D, pull out, pull down. Control D, out and down, and again and again. Oops, too far. Okay, before we go any further, we have how many steps now? Is that 6? So we're going to press play and just make sure that we can actually walk up and down our steps. We need to make sure that it's not too much for us to walk. So if we walk to about there, then try walking up our steps, that means our steps are fine. So I'm going to hopefully cheat now. I'm going to select the 6 steps we already have created, duplicate, pull them out, and then pull them down. And if we go below our surface, you can see that underneath it's not as pretty, but you do not need to worry about that at all at this present moment in time. So I'm going to select our 6 steps again, duplicate, pull them out, and then pull them down again. And I think one more time, duplicate, out, and down. Okay, so now we have our steps leading down into our subway. So we just kind of need to make it look a bit more, whoops, and a bit too far there, my apologies. We need to make it look more like a subway up above. So to do that, let's collapse this there in our subway, our steps. Deselect everything. You can click anywhere just to deselect everything. Game object, 3D object, cube, as always. And as always with a new object, zero out the axis. Let's focus on it. And let's pull it into rough position of where we want it, which is about there. Okay, so let's shape our object. We want it long ways down here, so we'll have this as 10. But we want it a little bit thinner on the z-axis or z-axis, so we'll put that as 0.5. So let's pull that against our... is that still too thick, do you think? Should we change that to 0.25 maybe? I think we'll have 0.25 and see how that goes. And we need to change the y-axis, the scale on this. Let's see, what would be a nice number? Let's put that to 10 for now. No, that's far too much. 5. So now we need to make sure underneath here, in fact we might need 10 after all. So if you position your camera here, you can see where this needs to come down to. So realistically, we need to pull it down to, needs to go much further down, so we are going to need this taller. Let's set this to, what would be a good number? What would be a good number? How about 7? Let's see how 7 looks. Okay, so let's pull this up a little. About there I think. Let's have a look underneath, that looks fine. Okay, so what I might do is I might delete some of these steps. So let's press play and let's see how these steps fare up. Okay, so it looks like this needs to pull down a little. So we go down. And I think that looks okay there. So we need to delete the last couple of steps. So we'll delete 1, 2, 3. So that should about do roughly there. That looks fine. So this particular object we just need to pull down a little more. So I think there's probably going to be about the best we can do. That looks fine. What we'll do now is drag and drop tunnel walls onto this object. Now let's have a look. Up above, I think that looks fine actually. I don't think we need to change the scale on this one. That looks okay to me. Okay, so let's move back here a little. That looks okay. So now I'm going to collapse the steps, and in Subway again, right click, create empty, right click again, rename, and we'll call this one, what should we call this? Let's call this Subway Walls. Cube, right click, rename, and we'll call this Wall, not Wall, Wall 001. And drag and drop into Subway Walls. There we go. So now this subway ball, Control D, duplicate, and move it to the other side. Does that look okay? Yep, I think that looks fine. So now what we'll do is we will create this back end just here. So I think we'll cheat with this one. We'll cheat. So we'll take this wall, we'll duplicate, and we'll rotate on the y-axis by 90 degrees. And you can see it's flipped it that way. Let's see. Let's change the scale on this to X. We'll change to 5. Is that reasonable? So let's try and move it into position. About there, maybe. So we might need to just alter. Yeah, we need to alter this just a little more. So it looks like we might need to set it to 5.5. No, too much. 5.25. Yes, I think that looks okay. 5.25. We do need to change the height of it. As you can see, it's kind of blocked our subway in. So the height, rather than 7, needs to be, let's say, what's a good height? 3. I think that would be a bit more reasonable. So now we just need to pull it up to bring it there. But now we need to see if it still gives us enough space to walk down our steps. So once again, press play. Now we go down our steps. Okay, so I think we might change this to 2 instead of 3. And then just pull it up once again. It's not perfect there. Maybe 2.5 might do the trick. Now let's just pull it down a touch. No, okay, we'll set it to 2. And we'll just manually bring it up to the correct place. So we'll just bring it to there. So now that's all against each other. And the gap to get out of our subway, hopefully, no. Okay, we do need it a little more, so let's set this to 2.2. Okay, 2.2 should be just about enough. So we just need to adjust this one here so as it is right against everything. About there. There we go, that'll do. You can be a bit more accurate if you would like to. So now that leaves us with a gap down here for our subway. Okay, so what we're going to quickly do is we're going to create a quick subway sign, the roof, and a few more things really quickly. So, game object, let's see, 3D object, cube, 0 the axis on this again. Let's focus in on it, and what we'll do is we'll put let's see, tunnel roof onto this particular cube. So now we'll make this the roof. Nice and simple. So we'll set this to X, we'll set to 5. We'll set the Y, we'll keep it as 1, I think. Or should we, no, we'll set it to 0.5. And we'll put the the Z axis to 20. So here, debug, and let's change the scale to 2 and 8. So back to normal. So this now acts as our roof for our subway. So we just need to move this into position, which should be about there for now, I think. So if we go in underneath, excuse me, so we just need to pull it down a touch. About there. So now let's have a look underneath. Yep, I think that looks okay. And now what we'll do is we will right click, rename, and we'll call this roof. And we're going to put this directly in the subway folder. Control D to duplicate and pull it down to about there. And then down here, tunnel floor, pull it onto there. Go back to debug here. And let's change the settings here back to 2 and 8. The reason we put 2 and 8, it just makes it look a bit more realistic rather than stretched. And down here it has renamed it to roof 1. So right click, rename, and we'll call this floor. So now when we play, head over to our little subway, down our steps, you can see our floor is coming into place and our roof is coming into place. So we can finish these off next time. So now back above ground, back to our subway entrance. We're going to quickly create a sign. So game object, 3D object, cube. And as always, zero out the axis. And let's focus in on our cube. You can double click here in the hierarchy. So right click, rename, we'll call this sign. Drag and drop into subway. In fact, I'll actually call that, oops, created empty there. Don't do that. Okay, so sign, rename. I'm actually going to rename this to sign 001. And this subway sign texture, drag and drop onto the cube. So now we want to resize it to be more like a sign. So we want the y-axis to, should we keep that as 1? I think 1's okay. X, let's have that as 2. And the Z, or Z, set this to 0.01. And you'll see it ends up a very thin sign. So now, move the sign into position. So I need to move it here, up a touch. Let's have it hovering just above. And so I think I might set the scale to 2.5, just to make it a little bit longer. And now let's pull it this way. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to just move this way a little, spin it round, and I'm going to put the sign about there, I think. So again, let's duplicate this sign and let's pull it over this way to there. So what we'll do in the next episode with the sign is we'll actually make like a barrier all the way around our subway entrance. So the last thing we'll do in this episode is, if you remember, we created this background building in the previous episode. Rather than have the same texture on everything here, we're quickly going to import another texture. So drag and drop this into Unity, about there. This is in your building textures. So what I will do now is I'm going to collapse subway there, collapse sidewalk, background buildings, back tower. I'm going to duplicate, hold Control and D, move it this way and down just a touch. And then I'm simply going to drag and drop onto each part of the tower. So when we press play, we should see just there another tower. I think it's best if we move this into a bit more visible place. So I'm going to move that about there, I think. So you'll notice here, like I say in the last episode, there is nothing underneath holding the building. That looks funny at the moment, but when we come to the next episode and build more shops along here, you'll just see this top of this background tower, so you don't need to worry too much. So quickly finish the episode there. Let's have another walk down into our subway. So there we go. We've started building our little subway entrance within our city. So the next episode we'll look at finishing it off up to a point around here, because eventually we'll be building this side of the road and we'll need another station entrance like that, but it's really easy because we can just basically duplicate it, so it's nice and simple. So we'll leave this episode there for now. Thank you very much for watching, and I hope to see you in the next one.